On November 1st, 2025, SNAP work requirements exceptions are being removed for veterans, homeless individuals, and so much more. This is due to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was signed into law on July 4th, 2025. The current exceptions to SNAP work requirements, according to those who are able-bodied adults without dependents, are as follows. Children, seniors, veterans, individuals experiencing homelessness, individuals aged 24 or younger and in foster care on their 18th birthday, pregnant women, and people who are exempt for physical or mental health reasons. The Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, Bill H.R. 3746, was a bipartisan bill that was signed by Joe Biden to fix a debt ceiling crisis. Both parties agreed to this bill becoming law, which was signed on June 3rd, 2023 by President Joe Biden. This act increases the federal debt limit, establishes new discretionary spending limits, it rescinds unobligated funds, expands work requirements for federal programs, and modifies other requirements related to the federal budget process. This was only done for fiscal year 2024 and 2025. So the SNAP work requirements for those who are able-bodied adults without dependents are going back to what was prior to the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023. So now that we know the exceptions that have been removed, let's learn the exceptions that are going to be current as of November 1st. And this is again related to SNAP work requirements for able-bodied adults. And the exceptions are under 18 or over 65 years of age, medically certified as physically or mentally unfit for employment, a parent or other member of a household with responsibility for a dependent child under 14 years of age, otherwise exempt under subsection D2, a pregnant woman, an Indian, or an urban Indian, as such terms are defined in paragraph 13 and 28 of section 4 of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act, or you can read the rest in 139.82 of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. In addition to the exceptions, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Services, it also is going to increase the upper age limit for those who are able-bodied adults without dependents time limit. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act increases the age of those subject to the time limit to age 64. Prior to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the individual's time limit was for ages 18 to 54, who were only subject to the able-bodied adults without dependents time limits. Therefore, individuals aged 18 to 64 are now subject to the time limit unless they meet another exception. This does not change the upper age limit for the general work sections of 6D3 of the Act, of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Individuals aged 60 or older remain exempt from the general work requirements, including mandatory participation in SNAP employment and training. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, Food, Nutrition, and Services, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act does not impact the definition of elderly in Section 3J of the Act. Individuals aged 60 or older continue to be defined as elderly for SNAP purposes. In addition to those changes, there's also changes to the exception for children in the household. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act limits the exception for a parent or other household member with responsibility for a dependent child to children under 14 years of age. Previously, this exception applied to a parent or other household member with responsibility for a dependent under 18 years. Now, this basically is changing. With children between the ages 14 and 17 are now subject to the time limit, unless they meet another exception, including caring for a child in the household under age 14. And just to clarify about general SNAP work requirements, especially for those who are able-bodied adults without dependents, the work requirements were always you have to work at least 20 hours per week or 80 hours per month through employment participation in a qualified work program or a combination of both. Able-bodied adults without dependents were also limited to receiving SNAP benefits for just 3 months in a 36-month period unless they met a work requirement. Individuals can continue to receive SNAP beyond the 3-month time limit, by working, participating in a qualifying work program, including SNAP, education and training, or any combination of the two for at least 20 hours a week, average monthly to 80 hours a month. Individuals can also meet the time limit by participating in complying with the workfare for the number of hours assigned, equal to the result obtained by dividing a household SNAP allotment by the higher of the applicable federal or state minimum wage. For the purposes of the time limit, working includes unpaid or volunteer work that is verified by the state agency. These requirements are sometimes referred to as the Able-Bodied Adults Without Dependent work requirement. Now let's get into the quality control for states in reference to SNAP programs and requirements, and of course TANF, that I'll be talking about in another video. Now I've seen this going around the internet for today, and how states are going to be held accountable. But states have always been held accountable when it comes to any type of federal funding for programs. So according to the United States Department of Agriculture, under the Food and Nutrition Services, as appropriate, hold states harmless for quality and control purposes for 120 days from the required implementation date. So this is basically saying once all of this is implemented, the state has a 120-day exclusion period, right? But they cannot apply if the state agency does not implement the new provision in accordance with 7 CFR 275-2 D27, which basically states it's basically a review of active cases, right? It's basically like when you go to the state agencies, they are supposed to be reviewing their cases. And then the federal government also has quality control to also determine, if where the person is or family is right now has changed or it hasn't. And if anything has or hasn't, that needs to be reported. So when changes in household circumstances occur, the reviewer shall determine whether the changes were reported by the participant and handled by the agency. That is and all has been there for a long time. The review of active cases shall include a household case record review, a field investigation, except as provided in another paragraph, the identification of any variances and error analysis, and the report of review findings. So this update is basically saying, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, that the state is going to be allotted a 120-day variance period. State agencies that implement a provision later than the required implementation date but before the end date of the exclusionary period will only be allowed a variance exclusion for the time remaining. So states had a long time to get this stuff implemented. Please check your states to ensure that these policies are updated. In addition, I definitely encourage you to read your state Department of Social Services, or the other name that it has for your nutrition program, SNAP and TANF. In addition, if you have some time, please read certain parts of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. If you have any questions, I know this is in section 10102 of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. You can go on congress.gov, and it's HR 1. Please stay connected with me, Bianca Bing Black TV, on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. More to come before November 1st comes in, so stay locked in. I'll provide updates as they come in. Have a great day.